Hello, Steve White, TrekBoy89 for Steve White's89. Well, it's still the 27th in America, and March 26th was in Boston, Leonard Nimoy Day. I was very happy to hear a little while ago that before becoming the US Secretary of Labour, former Boston Mayor Marty Walsh declared that March 26th would be Leonard Nimoy Day in the city of Boston. I was very happy to hear about this. I knew that he'd come from Boston. He was very proud of coming from Boston. He told a lot of stories about his early days in Boston and going to Hollywood and everything. And it was really nice to hear they did this. Leonard Nimoy was, I think, a really great person. I guess he was a good representative of the state. I can't imagine anyone not wanting to claim ownership to Leonard Nimoy if they could. Universities that he went to, places he lived. So it was really nice to hear this, and I meant to do a video about it, just because why not? And I got a bit distracted with stuff, and I was going to do it yesterday. I watched Superman and Lois, and afterwards I wasn't feeling so good. I laid down about 9:30, and the next thing I knew, it was like 3 a.m. in the morning, and it's like, I'm just going to go back to sleep. So I kind of didn't do it on the day I wanted to, on the actual 26th. It's the 28th in Australia, but it's still the 27th in America, so I'm going to put it up now because, okay. I didn't have the fortune to meet Leonard Nimoy. He would have turned 90. Now, William Shatner just turned 90, and I did a video about him because my tribute to him was basically recounting my experience with him, which was a horrible experience. He's not very good with fans. He was horrible to me. Or at least he didn't acknowledge my existence. I think that's horrible. Some people might say it's like it's not a non-issue because he didn't actually do anything. But yeah, so I didn't have anything positive to say about Shatner. But Nimoy, I didn't meet, so I don't have any stories, but I do have some positive things to say about him. Now, the closest I came to Leonard Nimoy was two things. One was I had a friend who gave me a bunch of Star Trek memorabilia that he wanted to get rid of, and he had a story. He had a small Leonard Nimoy autographed picture, which I just realised I should have had right now to show you. I guess it'll be the thumbnail. And he worked in a hotel, and Leonard Nimoy was staying in the hotel. Now, I didn't think Leonard Nimoy had ever come to Australia, and then I found out that he did. I don't know when this was. This guy was a bit older than me. This was like a decade ago as well. And he sort of had a few little stories about Leonard coming in and checking in and talking to him and that. And said when he left, he gave him that little autograph. It was like a little black and white 3 or 4 by 6 or something like that. So not your standard 8 by 10 autograph photo that you sort of do at conventions. Had a white border, and he wrote in blue pen. And he just left that with him when he was leaving because he knew he was a Star Trek fan, and apparently he'd been very nice as far as doing his job. So he got that, and that little story was sort of the only personal experience I ever heard about Leonard Nimoy. And then a few years later, Leonard Nimoy, they were trying to get him to come here for a convention, but he was already sick, so he couldn't fly. So the guy in charge had arranged a video call, basically, and he was going to do a convention that way, where he was going to greet people and do questions. Now, normally in a convention, basically they just open the floor and anyone who wants to ask a question stands up, and they just get through as many as they can. And the people who actually are bold enough to stand up and actually have a decent question sort of get the attention. Now, unfortunately, the guy running this kind of already sold the tickets to speaking to Nimoy, basically. So just friends of his and people he knew got to talk to Leonard. It wasn't like open to the general thing, or people who bought VIP or something, and I didn't. So I didn't get to speak to him. I was sitting towards the front though, so like he could see me when he was looking at the screen, and when he waved, I waved back. So he, on some level, he for a moment knew I existed as a fan, sitting in a group of people for a Star Trek convention conference call sort of thing. And that's about it. That's the closest I got to him, was seeing him answer other people's questions and just talk on video. And I have a couple of photos and that's it. So I never really met Nimoy. From what I hear, he was great. I'd love to have met him. I idealised Spock quite a bit when I was younger, for many reasons. I might do a little video about Spock one day, but I would love to have met him. I wish I'd travelled to see him because he would do conventions in his area where he didn't have to travel. He did not like fans. There was a big thing about Leonard Nimoy didn't like his fans. Supposedly once upon a time he felt a bit typecast by Spock, and as a serious actor he found that very difficult. Shatner had the same problem, but Shatner always also had the issue of being considered a bad actor because of Star Trek, because he was so over the top. Now we sort of recognise now his highly stylised style of acting contributed to Kirk and the character and everything, and I don't think he's a bad actor, but he had a bit of a reputation on top of being typecast. Nimoy, on the other hand, had a reputation for being a good actor and was typecast, so he did manage to have more of a career in the 70s than Kirk did, and Shatner did. But he did write the book I Am Not Spock, because he wanted to say to people, just simply say, I'm not Spock, I'm Leonard Nimoy, this is my story. But that turned into a very negative thing, because around that time he was negotiating to be in the Star Trek Phase 2 TV series, and he didn't sign on, and everyone was like, oh my god, Leonard Nimoy doesn't want to be Spock, and he did this book, I'm Not Spock, he hates Spock, so it became like a thing. But he eventually did sign on to play Spock in the film a couple of years later. I'm guessing it was just he just was busy with other things and couldn't do it. There was also a lawsuit because they were using Leonard Nimoy's likeness for advertising and things, and they weren't paying him for it. So he had to sue Paramount, and all that had to be resolved before, of course, he could go back to playing the role. So there were issues why he wasn't. It wasn't that he didn't want to play Spock or hated Spock or anything like that. And then later he did another autobiography saying, I am Spock. I've read that one. I haven't read I'm Not Spock. I do own them both. And I have the audio versions of both as well. And I have to sit down and spend an evening with Leonard Nimoy / Spock. And when you play a character that long, especially on a TV series, they do become sort of a part of you, and you end up having to put part of you into that character, because you can't create and be that character all the time. You have to fall back on your own sort of person in a way. So he did sort of, much like Spock made his peace with his humanity, Leonard Nimoy made his peace with Spock and always being associated with that role, and he did come to appreciate it eventually. He went on to direct films and do other things. He became a photographer, so it didn't stop him or anything. But I wish I'd met him. I really, 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 really wish I'd met him. I wish I'd travelled to meet him and Grace Lee Whiteley, because they both died and I didn't meet them now. Before I could really travel to see any Star Trek stars, DeForest Kelley and James Doohan both died, so I didn't have any chance of meeting them. Now DeForest Kelley, I have a little bit of luck where I'd never met him obviously, and never met anyone who met him, but I bought a book of the Star Trek Concordance in a op shop for $10, and written in the back, someone had written notes where they'd met DeForest Kelley in an airport or something, and they wrote out, I guess so they'd remember the conversation, what happened. So I had this little conversation between DeForest Kelley and the person who used to own the book, and I read that, and I sort of felt like I had some little piece of him there, because I at least had this little recount of this little fan interaction, but I never met him. I bought an autograph of his a while ago at a convention. Doohan, I still don't have an autograph, and I never met him. I never got close. He did come to Australia when I was a kid, and I wanted to go, but I was too young to travel by myself. It was in Melbourne or Sydney, and I was living in Tasmania, so I never got to meet him. So I never met Spock, Scotty, or McCoy, but I met Kirk and the rest of the cast, except I didn't also meet Grace Lee Whiteley or Majel Barrett, and I wish I'd just travelled to one of those big Las Vegas cons and just got them all at once. But I think I sort of thought they'd live forever, and then I was working casual for a long time, and I didn't really have the money to travel, but I regret it now. The one time I was going to travel was for the 50th anniversary, and I thought, the only people you haven't met who are alive are Whoopi Goldberg and Kirstie Alley, and they never do conventions, so don't bother. And then they both did that convention. I'm like, no, I could have got them both in one go. I'll probably never have a chance to see them again. Now, I don't care about Kirstie because she turned into a Trump idiot, so I don't really need to meet her in person anymore. But Whoopi Goldberg I'd still like to meet. So maybe one day I'll meet her, but I don't ever see her doing conventions. She doesn't like to fly, so coming to Australia is an issue. I know she's related to a friend of mine's family, and she came for a wedding a long, long time ago to Australia, just for the wedding. So I know some people who met her, and apparently she's perfectly nice, but I don't think I'll ever get to meet her. But Leonard Nimoy, I'm glad he's got his own day in Boston. I'm glad they're acknowledging him. From everything I've heard about him, he was much nicer than Shatner, but I don't have my own story. But I just want to do a little tribute to Leonard Nimoy on his 90th birthday, and sort of congratulate him for getting, his own day in Boston. But I'm going to go. I don't have anything else to say. I could go through his whole career and everything. I was surprised, actually. I will just mention, I was surprised at how young he was when he got to Hollywood and how many years he had doing random parts like Zombies of the Stratosphere before he got the role of Kirk. Like, he was working in movies and TV in the 50s. So he had a whole 15 years of working in Hollywood before he got the role of Spock. I thought it was a lot shorter than that. I thought he'd come to Hollywood a little bit older and he only had a few years sort of pottering around before he found Spock. So that was interesting when I was just watching some videos about him. I didn't realise how long he'd been working in Hollywood before he got the role of Spock. I knew Shatner had been doing theatre forever and all that. So that was interesting. But I'm actually going to go this time. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Maybe even ding the little bell, which I don't know if it's up there. I keep pointing up here. I don't know. I need to work this out. I need to work out where I point. I think the bell's down there or down there. I don't know. It does help. I would like to grow my channel. Thanks. Bye.